What's up, everyone, and welcome back to Miss Main Event. I am your host, Tasha. And last week, in my top 5 moments in women's basketball for 2025 video, I snuck Project B into the honorable mention. I said it was one of the biggest stories to watch heading into 2026, and I also said it was giving me Grand Slam track vibes. Now, I also in that video promised I'd come back and explain why I said that. Well, the timing took care of itself. Michael Johnson's Grand Slam track just filed for bankruptcy, listing somewhere between 10 and $50 million in liabilities and basically no assets. Now, this is after its first season. Vendors were being asked to eat huge losses, and athletes were still chasing money they were promised. So, today we're going to do three things. We're going to break down what Grand Slam track was supposed to be, how it fell apart, and what Project B is promising, and how those two stories rhyme when the financial foundation isn't rock solid. So buckle up, let's get settled in, and let's get into it. We're going to start with what Grand Slam track was supposed to be. And I guess we can jump it off with the basics. Grand Slam track was pitched as the super league that was going to quote unquote save track and field. We know that the popularity of track and field in the United States is not up to par with the rest of the world. And Michael Johnson's goal was to get more eyes on the sport. And Michael Johnson is a four-time Olympic gold medalist. He put his name on a four-meet circuit with 48 contracted racers and the richest prize pool the sport had ever seen. So the idea was simple but very powerful. You're going to guarantee that the stars are going to show up, you're going to pay them real money, and package the whole thing in a modern made for TV product. So, first place in an event was supposed to be $100,000. Last place is still 10 grand. So the athletes were guaranteed to walk away with something. And if the total prize purse of the entire four event circuit was going to be about $12 million. Then they layered on the innovation. This is something that was different for the sport. Going to have two events per athlete every weekend that they have an event. And those storylines are going to be built around the versatility of these athletes and the broadcast production with these superb graphics, drones, new camera angles, the whole shebang. So on paper, it looked like the Diamond League's worst nightmare. And the Diamond League is the legacy league of track and field, world track and field, that is. So now, let's talk about how it all fell apart, the good, the bad, and the ugly. So here's the thing about Grand Slam track. Not everything about it was a flop. The good is real. Everything good about it was really good. Visually, it was one of the most advanced track broadcasts I think I've ever seen outside of the Olympics. And the athletes love the idea of guaranteed appearance money and big checks that went way beyond what they get at most of the big meets. And some of the stars used it as a proving ground and they thrived. But then the bad showed up and it showed up quick. The first event was in Kingston, Jamaica, which technically is like a sprint mecca. It's a powerhouse. People in Jamaica love track and field. Well, the crowds in Kingston were sparse. It was like there's a 30,000 plus stadium. And when we're watching this on TV, you can see that they clearly struggled to fill even hardly a section of that 30,000 seat stadium. And the TV numbers landed around 240 to 250,000 viewers a day. And that is well below what the Diamond League meets pull on the very same networks. So even after they tightened the meet from 3 days to two, because they did the first meet, a 3 night event, the second meet was a 3 night event. Then the third meet, they said we can't do 3 nights, clearly. So they tightened it down to 2 nights a week. And the TV audience and the in-person audience never matched the ambition or the budget of these meets. All right, so we did the good, we did the bad, and now things are going to get ugly. Clearly, the money wasn't what people thought it was. Grand Slam Track had told the world it had around $30 million lined up. Remember, 12 million of which was going to be paid to the athletes. But these recent bankruptcy filings and the reporting surrounding that show that in reality, they ended up with somewhere between 10 and $50 million in liabilities and no more than $50,000 in assets. This is in part because a key investor pulled out of a big term uh, commitment and created a massive cash flow hole they never quite dug out of. So by late 2025, Grand Slam Track was asking vendors to accept 50 cents on the dollar just to keep the league alive. And then the athletes, we're not even going to talk about how much they were owed in prize and promotional money. Okay, so regardless to whether the vendors were going to agree with this, which I cannot see why they would. I guess a part of me says they would feel like, well, better to get something than nothing. But regardless, World Track and Field said, this is not how we do things. And they said this would not be something that was acceptable. So eventually, the league had to file Chapter 11 bankruptcy. And now there's a real chance that some of these athletes will never see every penny that they were owed. Now, we're going to talk about one of the athletes because number one, they had a stellar 2025 season. But number two, they started the season early. They committed to doing Grand Slam track and they won three of the events. So each event would have a winner, clear winner at the end. And for three of those events, the three that were put on because the fourth one was canceled, did I mention that? The fourth one was canceled. So for the three events that were put on, Melissa Jefferson Wooden won all three of her events. So that's $300,000 that Melissa Jefferson Wooden would have been owed. Now, another part of the Grand Slam track structure was that there was going to be an MVP at the end of the season for this league. Melissa Jefferson Wooden clearly would have been the MVP for this league, and that MVP was guaranteed another $100,000. So in total, one athlete, Melissa Jefferson Wooden, was owed $400,000, and she'll probably never see every penny of that money. I guess this is the cautionary tale. There were big promises, there was big production, and not enough actual money behind it. And I know you're thinking, Tasha, Grand Slam track is track and field. Project B is basketball. So let's shift gears and talk about what Project B is promising, because this is where the parallels start to get a little interesting. Now, Project B is a brand new global women's basketball league. It's set to launch in November 2026. And I know a lot of you have heard the details, but some of you may not. We're talking about 6 teams, 11 players per team. playing 7 two-week tournaments across Europe, Asia, and Latin America. Notice there are no US based games on the current blueprint, and that I think is also a very bold choice for Project B. But anywho, it's also led by tech guys Grady Burnett and Jeff Prentice, and those are people with serious Silicon Valley and startup resumes. And on the basketball side, we've got Elena Beard as the chief basketball officer. Now, she's only a 4-time WNBA All Star, former Defensive Player of the Year. She's helping to build this thing, and she's been the one taking the mic, making the case to the public. And then there's the money. So, reports say that Project B is offering starting salaries around $2 million a year with multi-year deals that can hit 8 figures. Plus, players get equity stakes in the league. Big names like Nneka Agumake, Alyssa Thomas, Jonquel Jones, Jewel Lloyd. These ain't fringe names. They are all the core of the WNBA elites that have already signed on. Now, comparing the promised salaries to a WNBA Supermax, that's still under $1 million. Now, when we compare that $2 million to a WNBA Supermax, right now, a Supermax is well under $1 million, and Unrivaled is being touted as being a league that pays well. They're averaging $220,000 per season for a shorter season as well. And comparing the Project B money to Unrivaled in WNBA, that's life-changing money for these athletes. So I'm not rooting against Project B. If Project B works, everybody wins. Women's basketball wins, the fans win, the athletes win. Yay. But when a league that hasn't played a single game is dangling that kind of money, it's fair to start asking, how does how does this actually work? And that is why this is giving me Grand Slam track vibes. There are more than a few things about Project B that make my Grand Slam track spidey senses go up. First, there's this funding mystery. See, early on, Project B's founders were reportedly trying to raise up to $5 billion. And when they were asked more recently how much they've actually raised, they declined to give a number. Now, this was in a podcast episode on the Sarah Spain podcast where she interviewed Elena Beard. So, Elena Beard was kind of evasive when answering these questions. These founders, they say they have elite venture and growth investors. They'll list some tech funds and athlete backers, but we still do not know the size of the war chest or the runway of how much money they have. And that's the exact kind of vagueness that burned Grand Slam track. When their investor situation changed, there was no cushion and there was no transparency. I think it's fair to ask, how do 7 tournaments in foreign cities generate $100 million plus annually? And we haven't heard anything about broadcast deals or sponsorship details. So if you don't know what the product is, then you are the product, basically. So if there is no way to know how they're going to generate the money for this league, for these salaries, then we have to try to figure out, what are they going to sell us? And it makes me feel like that you're going to have to get some kind of high priced streaming service or app in order to watch these games. It's too many things up in the air. Like I said, no transparency. Secondly, there's the Saudi situation. Now, Project B has gone out of its way to say, hey, we don't have Saudi funding. But when this league was first announced, That is how it was presented. The Saudi backed Project B. But now what Project B is saying is that they are partnering with Sela, which is owned by Saudi Arabia's public investment fund, and their only connection is running events. Technically, they're talking this is an operational partner, not a capital investor, but a lot of fans care about where the money and where the influence come from, and that distinction feels thinner than the press releases make it sound. Given the Saudi history of not treating women as equals in their society, a lot of women say, oh, but it's fine for them to make money off the backs of these women, but these women would have literally no voice in their society. Plus, kind of, uh, where's this money coming from and how much blood is attached to the money? I get why people are being reserved about being involved with something that is backed by Saudi money, but they don't have any problem with some of the American companies that have a lot of blood on their hands that are associated already with women's basketball. But let me not get on that soapbox. So the third thing that's giving me Grand Slam track vibes is the transparency in public interviews. And when Elena Beard sat down with Sarah Spain, she was thoughtful, but she sidestepped confirming actual salary figures and didn't go into hard numbers on how much funding was already locked in. So some of that is normal at this stage. This is the early stages. You don't want to show your entire hand. But if you're promising $2 million contracts and talking about equity, at some point we can't have "trust us, bro" be the entire message. You feel what I'm saying? And this is where I want to be really clear. Project B is not automatically Grand Slam Track 2.0. On the similarity side, both were selling themselves as player first disruptors with money that blows the existing leagues out the water. Both are asking athletes to believe in a future that hasn't been built yet and to organize their careers around a startup. Both have gaps between the size of the promises and what we know about the underlying business. But there are also key differences that could matter, especially when I want to be fair and present both sides of this. Grand Slam track was basically Michael Johnson, an elite athlete with a very storied Olympic history that other athletes trusted. He also had a small inner circle and one major investor. And when that investor left, it blew a hole in the entire budget. Project B has seasoned tech founders, already billionaires, a broader investor base, and someone like Elena Beard, who's also trusted. She has lived the WNBA grind. She's done work in venture capitalism, player transition. She is someone the athletes feel they can trust, and she has a lot of goodwill with the fans. So Grand Slam Track was inventing a new format on top of a new league. Project B is giving you standard basketball. Nothing truly innovative about the way the game is played itself. It's 5 on 5. It's got some big names, but people don't have to try to wrap their mind around what's going on with Project B as far as the product is concerned. And as far as the money is concerned, they have the tech backing where even if things fall apart, they should be able to cover the salaries of these women who are going out to play. But I'm still trying to figure out how this thing is going to make money. So, where does that leave us? It comes down to maybe one thing, and that is the financial foundation. If the money is actually there, committed, and not theoretical money like Grand Slam track, and there's a real believable revenue plan behind all of these salaries, these big ass salaries they're promising, Project B could be more like unrivaled, ambitious, disruptive, sustainable. Now, if it's mostly just vibes, connections, and loose term sheets, then it starts to look a lot like Grand Slam track, only with a ball. But again, I guess the unrivaled comparison is always there too. I'm sometimes a glass half empty type person, and I'm looking at it as uh, the Grand Slam track thing kind of jumps out at me, but it could also be like unrivaled, which is making us proud because it is something innovative. It is something different. It was a learning curve in trying to figure out how this game was played, but they pulled it off. They had the revenue. They backed the salaries. They walked the walk. And Unrivaled is headed into its second season, something that we probably will never get from Grand Slam track. Of course, there are questions that athletes and fans should be asking. So if you are a player or a fan thinking about Project B or any new league, this is where Grand Slam track should be a lesson, not just another little headline. As especially the athletes, they need to know how much money is actually in the bank today. As of this moment, who are the main funders? What happens to your salary if a major investor walks? Is your pay guaranteed in escrow, or is it conditional on year one revenue? What's the timeline of profitability? What's the plan if it takes longer than expected? These are not questions of people who are just hating on Project B. That's just good business sense. And especially after watching the Grand Slam track athletes and vendors get left holding the damn bag. And if you're a fan, we don't have to pick sides right now. We can be excited about Project B's ambition, or you can hate the whole premise on its face, but we still can recognize that the WNBA, love it or hate it, is the stable foundation of women's basketball in this moment. We enjoy Unrivaled. We support new ideas, and we can still demand receipts from anybody promising to be the heir apparent to the WNBA before they've even tipped off a single game. New leagues can absolutely push women's sports forward, but Grand Slam track is the reminder that if the numbers don't work, if math don't math, the fallout always lands on the athletes and the workers first. So Project B might very well end up being the one that changed the game. It might be on that side of history, or it could be another cautionary tale. What I don't want for these ladies is for them to be the proverbial canaries in the coal mine, because Project B has ambitious ideas and they want to start a men's version of this league, but it's mighty funny that they started with the women. And some might say that's just common sense that they started with the women because women's sports are exploding. Yes, this is absolutely 100% true. Women's sports are experiencing a sort of renaissance. But if, especially because of the way Project B is selling itself, as we don't want the fans to get tied to a country or a region or a city, we want them to support Project B because we have the top athletes. So you're basically supporting this project because of the athletes and not because of some loyalty to a geographic location, if you will. But who are the most globally well known basketball superstars. Mhm. They're men. But they didn't send the men out there because, of course, they would have to pay them more as a startup. And I just hope that the women are not being used as some type of weird experiment, if you get what I'm saying. So, yeah, Grand Slam track is looks like officially over with this bankruptcy filing. And Project B still has a very bright future ahead of it. And that, I hope, turns out to be the case and not, a repeat of this disaster with this Grand Slam track thing. Athlos is another kind of startup for track and field, and it had been doing so much better. That's the thing that's backed by Serena Williams' husband. I can't think of his name. He's just Serena Williams' husband. I know he got money, but yeah, he's Serena Williams' husband. But he backed that thing, and he made sure that the athletes knew that they were gonna get their money. It's called Athlos, if I didn't say that. But he made sure the athletes knew after their one meet, because it is for women only. I love it, I love it, I love it when our kings recognize our queens. But he cash apped their money to them the moment they won their events this past year. They got their money via Cash App that same day. So he made sure that people knew that they could trust him for the payments. He was not about to play around with their money the way Michael Johnson them did. And that was really, really a bad look for Michael Johnson. Anywho, y'all, that is what I think about the similarities between Grand Slam Track and Project B, and why I get the vibes and the icks just a little bit, but I'm still going to support this thing when and if it comes out. You guys let me know what you think. You can send me an email at missmaineventpod@gmail.com, or find me on any of the social medias at Miss Main Event Pod. You can also follow me on Substack. I'm gonna let you guess what the handle is. Miss Main Event Pod. And all of that information will be in the show notes. And yeah, I don't know what we're gonna talk about next time, but there hopefully will be a next time. Until then, y'all be light, and I'll see you in the next one. Peace.